Hello, this is Bill Slease. Welcome to the latest episode of Season 3 of Legal Wellbeing in Action. Today's episode, Affordable Wellbeing, is another installment of this year's theme, Wellbeing a Deeper Dive. For this episode, I speak with Hannah Bell, a lawyer, an accredited financial consultant and coach, and the founder of Bottom Line Personal Finance. Hannah talks about the challenges lawyers face when equating happiness with the accumulation of money, the stress associated with believing that you never have enough, particularly in the face of debt and an idealized lifestyle, the freedom that can result from taking inventory of your core values and reconciling your relationship with money to align it with those values, and how making informed, intentional choices about how and how much money you earn and spend can give you greater satisfaction and improve your overall well-being. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, and thank you again for joining us. This is Bill Slease, and today I'm joined by Hannah Bell, and we're going to talk about a topic that maybe doesn't get a lot of airplay in the well-being space. But before we get to the topic, Hannah, tell us just a little about yourself. And by the way, thank you so much for joining us. I know you got a lot going on, both home and work-wise, but maybe just for those people who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, let us know who you are and kind of what you're doing these days.
Thanks, Bill. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me on and giving this opportunity to talk about this difficult subject. My name is Hannah Bell. I am a 2016 UNM School of Law grad. I practiced law for 5 years before stepping away, and I started a financial wellness coaching practice. And that really stemmed out of an experience I had. And now that's what I'm doing full time. As you can see, I also have a new baby. I don't know if I can call him a newborn anymore. He's 3.5 months old, and I have a 2-year-old. So my hands are full at home and working, doing this thing that I just love so much and I'm feeling so passionately about.
Yeah, that's great. And that's really what we were excited to have an opportunity to talk to you about, Hannah, because, when we've been doing the well-being work now for several years, and these podcasts, we're in our third season. And we've talked a lot in the well-being space about what I'd call sort of the traditional issues and things that lawyers face, right? So are you getting exercise? Are you getting sleep? What kind of things are stressing lawyers? And we talk about substance abuse and the pressures of the job and compassion fatigue and secondary trauma and all of those things. But I think one issue that I myself probably had overlooked until you and I had this conversation, and I realized, wow, that touches something pretty deep in me in terms of one of my insecurities and stressors, and that's financial health, financial well-being, financial stress. And you made the move from the private practice, active practice of law, to now the active practice of financial well-being, financial coaching, that sort of practice. And so I think it's a topic that will actually resonate with a lot of lawyers, because probably like many of us, I think you and I started down the law school path for some of the same reasons. Tell us a little bit about sort of your thinking when you were thinking, I'm going to go to law school, because I know it was the same thought process I had. I was working in a job. It was okay, but I had this notion that there was something more, and that something more related to finances. Tell us about your journey.
Yeah. So I have an undergraduate degree in economics. When I finished college, I didn't really know what to do. I sort of saw two paths available to me. I could become a doctor or a lawyer. And those two paths really felt available because they were professions that I saw as earning a good living. And that was really important to me. I grew up really pretty middle class. I never felt that way. My dad was a general contractor and he worked really long, hard hours. And my mom, she'd always kind of take these odd jobs to help sort of support the family finances. And I watched their conversations be very tense around money. So when I looked at careers, I looked at careers that I saw would be lucrative. That was really important to me. I wanted to not feel tension. I wanted to know that things would be okay. And so I chose to become a lawyer for that reason. I don't think there was a lot of passion for the law, if I'm really honest. It was something that I saw as um, a solid career. I saw lawyers as being admired, as sort of a prestigious career. And the people I knew who were lawyers were financially very successful. So it was appealing to me for those reasons.
Right, and there's sort of this notion that if I have more money, I'm going to be happier, my stresses are going to be less, life is going to be all good and roses. And and my experience in my childhood was much the same. My mom worked in a job that was sort of on the lower end of the pay scale, and my dad always seemed to have work, but was always a job or two away from doing something different. And
Uh-huh.
even as a kid, I sort of absorbed that notion around money, that money's a big deal. Money can make you really happy, or that's what I thought, right? Or the lack of it can make you really, really stressed. And I think you talk about it in terms of, a paycheck or two away from being seriously strained, financial strain. And for me, somehow I internalize that to, I'm a paycheck or two away from being, living on the streets. And so, like you, the idea of, well, I'm going to find a career where I can be really financially successful and then I'll be happy, right? I sort of put those two together. I think it was kind of that same journey. But what did you actually find out once? I know what I found out in the real world. What did you find out?
Yeah, well, and Bill, there's some really interesting things about what you just said. Um, Most of our beliefs around money, we believe, are formed by the time we're 7. So really early in life, we are creating this lifelong path about what our money beliefs are. And that's just by observing those people around us, our parents, our community, our caregivers. And that can be really damaging for our self-esteem and what we end up doing. Um, so that's one part of it. Um, the other thing that's really interesting is that there's a lot of research that people even earning high livings, over $100,000 a year, which is, at least in our state, a pretty good earning. 50% of those people are living paycheck to paycheck. So there is that stress. So for me, you asked what I experienced, what I learned. I went to law school. I finished law school. I had student loans from going to law school, and my husband and I bought a car. So together we had $90,000 of debt, and we became lawyers, both of us, and our salary was not what we thought. Here we are, 2 lawyers earning less than $100,000 a year combined. So it was this huge awakening, one, that maybe the money wasn't in the career as I thought it was, and I know that there's kind of a spectrum of that depending on the work you do. Um, but also, suddenly we did have money, more than we'd ever had, and I didn't feel any happier. I was not happy as a lawyer, and I think a lot of that was just financial stress. I equated money with sort of being worthy, and I thought once I was earning a living, I'd kind of know what I was doing, which as lawyers, that's a really hard thing to ever feel super confident as, or in what you're doing. So for me, it was this huge awakening that, wow, I reached this goal that I had that I thought would kind of check this box and make me feel good and secure, and it didn't.
Right, and you mentioned that you had an undergraduate degree in economics. I actually had a degree in finance, and one of the things I found when it came to finances and money is exactly what you just described, right? So I started working as an associate at a firm, and I was making okay money, certainly much less than $100,000. So I had the same experience you had, which is, wow, that maybe this isn't as lucrative a career as I thought, at least not right now. And yet I've got this debt. And at that point, like you, I had a young family at home, and a spouse who had to work, or we weren't going to make ends meet. And at the same time, sort of had this notion in my head, well, I'm not actually managing the money I make very well either,
Mm.
right? So I'm making a little more than I've ever made in my life, but I'm not managing it well. And yet I have this degree in finance, and I couldn't admit to anybody, I don't know what the hell to
Mm.
do. I should know this, right? I'm a smart, quote, smart lawyer.
Yeah.
I have a degree in finance. I should be able to manage all this and be doing fine with this. And that causes that stress, that internalization of, Wow. Not only do I not know what I'm doing as a lawyer, I don't know what the hell I'm doing as a person.
Yeah.
And that creates that internal conflict, that internal stress. Um, and so somehow we have to find a way to figure that out. Tell us about that path for you. How did you get from, I've got that sort of almost imposter syndrome that's built around not just every lawyer, I think, has that early in practice, whether they admit it or not, but then you combine it with, I've got this financial stress and I'm supposed to know about finances. I'm an economics major, for God's sakes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a really big deal. When I finished law school, and I know my husband has sort of touched on this experience as well, suddenly everyone you know comes to you and says, "You're a lawyer, you know how to do everything." Which, uh, we don't have an easy time admitting that we don't know how to do everything, and I think there's so much wrapped up in that. There's our professional license is on the line if we aren't competent. That's very scary. That is how we make our living, and so acknowledging that you don't know something is really tough, and I think it's extra difficult for lawyers to do. So yeah, like you said, I have this degree in economics. I sort of just assumed I would know what to do, and then I didn't. And we were sort of living paycheck to paycheck, kind of feeling that way. And what we realized was that we didn't have kids at the time, but we realized that we needed two incomes to live. We both had to work to pay our bills every month. And we sort of had this realization that just making more money, like you said, we didn't know how to manage it. So just making more of it wasn't going to solve our problems. So we focused on what we valued. And one of the things that we really strongly valued was the ability to have one person not have to work, to have that option, to have those choices. And we wanted to be able to live on one income. So that was our goal. So I have always loved money topics. I used to help my dad when I was little. He had an office upstairs at our house, and I would trudge upstairs in my little like princess high heels and help him balance his checkbook. I loved that. I was little, like maybe 6 or 7, and I loved that. He'd show me how to use QuickBooks. So I've always sort of had this affinity for money and working with it. So I just started when we realized we couldn't live on one income, it took both of our incomes to get by. I just started learning everything I could about personal finance. And, so much of the advice out there is to make more money. It's make more money, be wealthy, money is good, which money is not bad at all. But the advice wasn't something that was helping me get to feeling safer or more secure or more well financially. So we just started really diving into what we cared about. And one of the things we realized that was causing us to need two incomes was the debt that we had. So we set this goal to pay off all of our debt. And that really made it so that we had to focus on what we valued. In order to pay off that debt, we could only have things we really cared about in our budget. So within 2 years, we paid off $90,000 of debt, which was
Wow.
all of my student loans and the car we bought. Um, and then we were able to live on one income, which was really the goal. That was the thing that we valued so much. And we knew that if that was possible, we could really have different choices available to us in our life.
Man, that's amazing. And you know what comes through so loudly to me in what you just talked about is actually a theme that I've heard in some of the other well-being spaces and some of the podcasts and the work we've done. Um, we have a friend who's really active in this community who talks about being very intentional with how you handle your own internal well-being, right?
Mm,
And that can be whether you're intentional about carving out time for exercise, or you're intentional about taking a tech holiday at 7 o'clock every night until 7 the next
mhm,
morning. And what I hear from you was, I had this stress associated with money. The sort of conventional answer is make more of it. And what you stopped instead and turned around and sort of faced it and started thinking intentionally about your value systems and your choices, and set goals for yourself, and really addressed it in a very thoughtful, sort of reflective way. And how'd that turn out for you? It sounds like it turned out well. $90,000 in 2 years is amazing, but more importantly, how are you feeling?
It was truly the most transformational thing that's happened in my life. It was just like you said, it was bringing attention and intention to something that I hadn't given thought to before. And truly, it's become almost this mindfulness practice now. I think every purchase I make is through this lens of, does this really bring joy to my life? Does this add value in a way that makes me happier? Does a purchase align with my values? Does it help me achieve my goals? Because a lot of times, and I see this with a lot of my clients, we spend really mindlessly. We spend on things for convenience a lot of times, or emotional spending is a really big deal, or just out of habit. Something kind of cues us that we should buy something else, and then we buy it and it's not thoughtful. And so for me, this has transformed my my diet. It has transformed how I manage time. It has transformed really how I think about what I bring into my life, because money is this energy or currency that allows for all of this. And so it's been truly this very intentional, mindful practice that has developed by looking at how we spend our money.
Yeah, and I love that you describe it that way because you hit the nail on the head. Certainly for me, for a long time, the idea of emotional spending, and even still sometimes, right? It's like I'm feeling a little off. The State Bar is not too far from Cabela's outdoor store, and I'll love to run down there and just sort of browse. And of course, they always catch me with the end caps of something that I think is
Yes,
shiny that, oh, I must have. And when you stop and take that sort of intentional look at it, do I really want this? Is it really going to bring some value to my life, right? Is it going to bring me joy, or is it just sort of this impulse emotional purchase to sort of make me feel good in the moment, and a week from now it'll be on the shelf and I'll never think about it? uh, i
exactly.
I think that's exactly right. And I think you talk about it in the paper that you wrote for us, and we're going to publish with your podcast. But you talk about that notion of equating status with more, like being able to show off that I have more. And certainly, culturally and society-wide, we sort of almost applaud that notion that you can show off all of your goods. And I think that idea of stopping and taking stock and inventory of what's really making me happy, what's enriching my life, it changes that whole relationship with money. No longer is money good or bad. It's a means to an end, and that end is bringing yourself really true contentment, joy, something you need. I mean, there's obviously the stuff you have to have. You got to buy food, right? But the those other discretionary purchases are these things that are going to improve my life, make me feel happier.
Absolutely. And when I'm working with clients, we sort of dream like what their dream life would look like. And almost everyone I have ever worked with, their dream life is to have freedom and choice. And so often when we start looking at how we're spending, the way we spend actually limits our freedom and choice. When we equate more, I was just thinking about this, when we buy a bigger house, because that's what we're supposed to do, we're supposed to have this big flashy house. Um, Suddenly we probably have to hire someone to help clean it because it's too big to take care of ourselves. And then if we have to have, two cars that are very nice to put in the garage, and then we also have to have at some point like new windows and a new roof, like all of these things just end up costing more, and they restrict our freedom in the long run because we need to be earning more to support that. So when we actually start looking at what it is we want, a lot of times the way we're spending doesn't match what we truly care about.
Right, right. You're getting the horse back in front of the cart, to use sort of an old tired metaphor, instead of the way we generally live, right? Which is we're just constantly chasing it,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
never going to get there. I love it. So you did more than just sort of turn this in internally and figured out how to take some of that stress away to find more joy in your life. You're actually doing this now for a living. Tell us a little bit about that. How did you get to that space?
I started talking to other people about what I was doing. I was telling my peers, other professionals, sort of this transformation I was having. And, when we paid off $90,000 of debt in that 2-year period, it also meant we had that much money ongoing to do other things we cared about, which was really life changing in the way I thought about that. We actually can have all this money to invest or save or whatever it is we care about, we now have because we're being intentional. And so I started telling other people about this, and had a lot of peers and other professionals come to me and say, "Wow, how did you do that? What is going on that you figured this out?" And so that's when I thought, like, wow, this is something big that other people need. And what I also started observing was a lot of these people I was talking to, a lot of people I was talking to were not happy in the careers that they were in, but they were feeling really trapped because of money, that they had sort of the golden handcuffs. They'd gotten through law school or through whatever professional school, medical school, architecture school, whatever it was, they had gotten there. And now they had to keep working, but they were really unhappy in what they were doing. And when they started that career journey, a lot of my law school peers wanted to be legal aid lawyers or public defenders, but ended up doing billable work because that's what would support the lifestyle that they'd created and frankly pay off a lot of the student loans that we take on. So I just started hearing this kind of over and over and over with people, and realized it was something I felt so passionately about. And there was this passion in it that I never felt in the law. And so it was something that I thought, wow, if everybody could sort of feel this passion about the work they're doing and be able to do it not for money, but because they love it, what a wonderful place we could live in. People were working because they truly enjoyed what they were doing, not because they were acquiring more stuff.
Right. And so you ended up in this space where now you're serving as a financial coach and helping people think intentionally, think about their value system, sort of travel that same journey that you traveled. And not necessarily that they're going to come to the same conclusions, but they're being thoughtful about it. They're being intentional about it, which is really in any well-being journey what we're hoping for.
Absolutely.
I want to finish with a quote right from your paper, if that's okay, because
Sure.
I just loved it. It's the last line in your paper, and it says, ultimately, true wealth lies not in the amount of money we accumulate, but in the freedom and choices it affords us and the relationships and experiences that give our lives meaning. I think that just says it so perfectly, right? It encapsulates exactly what we've been talking about today.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bill. I'm really grateful we got to have this conversation.
As am I, and it's always good to see you. And congratulations on the new one. And I'm sure we'll be talking again in the near future. Thanks so much, Hannah.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you for listening. This episode was produced by the State Bar of New Mexico's Wellbeing Committee and the New Mexico Judges and Lawyers Assistance Program. All editing and sound mixing was done by Blue Sky Eler. Intro music is by Gil Flores. The views of the presenters are that of their own and are not endorsed by the State Bar of New Mexico. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, or legal advice. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.